Hi everybody. Hi, this is Tony D with the Media Podcast. Yeah, I think I like that name. Tony's Media Podcast. I don't know, media. We're here today because I needed something else for the site, and I've been wanting to do a podcast for a long time. Initially, I wanted to do an audio-only podcast, and you could certainly listen to this. You know, you don't have to watch me talk, because especially in this first episode, I don't have a lot of cutaways or any cutaways, quite frankly. I'm just learning how to work the equipment, so it's pretty much going to be an audio thing, but you got to look at something on a video, so here I am. So this is going to be about media, so internet, TV, whatever. So first, I would like to thank my sponsors of my websites. We have randomcomics.net. They've been a hardcore sponsor for a while. Thank you guys. All your print comic book needs, go to randomcomics.net. Also, our sponsor for April, mydigitalcomics.com. They've got a great selection. A lot of their comics are free. They digitally download right in your computer. They have great, big, huge publishers like Aspen and Top Cow, so check them out at digitalcomics.com. Okay, so we're talking about media. Now, initially I wanted to do this podcast thing, and I had Google News here, and I just did like a 20-minute take of the podcast, just talking about the news. But the thing is, when you read the news now, it's terrible. I mean, I don't really think I get any information from reading the news anymore. Forget newspapers. Let's just eliminate them altogether at this point, because newspapers are just so behind the curve in terms of the time. They're losing money hand over feet, it seems. And, my mother still reads newspapers, still swears by them. I keep trying to tell her, even in their heyday before the internet, I didn't trust newspapers all that much, because they would use, the AP wire, and they would just get all their news stories from that and then just transcribe them. And quite frankly, I've met a few reporters in my time, doing comics, and I've been interviewed, a few dozen times. And I can tell you that most of the newspaper reporters were the worst interviews I've ever had. I mean, hands down. There was maybe two reporters that were really good and actually did nice reports on me. The vast majority of them were just incredibly incompetent. I had this streak of interviews when I was doing the Jersey Devil comic. I'll never forget, because I was living with my folks at the time, and the reporter thought it necessary to mention that I lived at home. Now, the first time it happened, I just wrote it off as, well, he's trying to make some sort of connection between comic books and living at home. And, I didn't take it as a slight against me or anything. I just figured, he was trying to get his angle in, whatever. So the first time it happened, no big deal. But then it happened again and again and again. And one time, I had an interview with this reporter. She came to my house and everything. And I said, look, I don't care what you print, really, about me, but just do me a favor. Don't mention that I live at home with my parents. And not only did she mention it in the article once, she did it twice. So, believe me, I have no faith in newspaper reporters at all. And this was mostly in the 90s. So now, what could they be paying these guys at this point? Most of it's all on the internet. You could read the Twitter feed and get, newer news than some of the stuff you get on a newspaper. So, please. But even the Google News, which really is just an aggregate of various news stories, first off, a lot of it's from newspapers. So here's the top story. Superheroes rule at raunchy MTV Movie Award Show. Okay? And that's from the Chicago Tribune. So that is the top story, of the world on Google. The MTV Movie Award Show. To me, this is incredibly amazing, because first off, MTV, when was the last time MTV was even relevant, really? And, no slam against them, although that is kind of a slam, I guess, but really, I mean, MTV used to be music television, and they don't play music anymore. The M doesn't stand for movies. The movie award show, back when Eddie Murphy was hosting it, it was pretty cool, I guess. But now, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm too old for MTV. It's certainly aimed at a much younger audience, but I just the movies they covered. They covered the Avengers and Silver Linings Playbooks. I mean, these movies are done. They're over. Silver Linings is still in the movie theaters, but that already won awards. Oscar awards. So it just seems like a retread at this point. It seems to me that MTV award movies should be giving awards to movies that that would never make it into the Oscars, but and I guess the Avengers is one of them, but even just doing movies about superheroes seems to be on its way out. And when I say on its way out, I mean we are braced for a glut of superhero movies over the next 2 years, but those are in production or done now. I'm talking about what they're thinking about for the future, because it can't be superheroes at this point. At some point, that dam's got to break, and they got to be like, oh, screw this. But still, I mean, that's the top news story of the world. Seems to me incredible. I mean, people are dying all over the planet for various reasons. There's horrible things going on, but that's the top story. Even the stories here, there are bigger stories. There's a story here about China's recovery losing steam, and the Yankees, and the dollar going down. I mean, all those stories are more important than MTV. And I don't even like sports. I could care less about the Yankees, but to me, they're at least more important than MTV. I mean, at least there's got to be more Yankees fans than I think MTV fans. I don't know. It's just sad. And some of these top news stories are ridiculous. For the U.S., one missing after avalanche east of Seattle. That's a pretty big story, I guess, but there's no other bigger story in the U.S. other than that. Technology, and honestly, this is a smaller subsection, so. Microsoft rumored to be working on touch-enabled smartwatch design. I don't know. They're already making iPhones bigger because the screen isn't big enough. How are you going? You're not going to be able to surf the internet on your watch. I mean, that's way too small. What are these screens going to do? I can barely use my wife's iPhone with my giant fat fingers. I can't imagine being able to do anything on a watch. Maybe 2 buttons, 1, 2. In entertainment news, it should be the MTV Awards, I guess, but here's the big entertainment news story. Justin Bieber blasted for his note at Anne Frank's house. And this to me is probably like a non-story. This to me is just a story that Justin Bieber is so famous that anything he says is twisted into some sort of story to get people to read it and sell newspapers or clicks or whatever. Because first off, who cares? Who cares what he thinks? He's just an entertainer. It's just another excuse to use his name to get people to read your newspaper, as far as I'm concerned. Here's the big story to me. This is the story that should be the top story. Scientists make laboratory-grown kidney. That to me is the biggest story, that I've heard in a long time. Because the fact that they can make human organs now, I mean, that's going to be big. That's going to change the world. You're going to have people living hundreds of years. Hopefully, I'll be one of those people. And it's not going to be like you're going to be sitting around and it's going to be a terrible quality of life or whatever. If they can replace your organs, that means you're going to be feeling good. You're going to be moving around more. That's huge news. That is huge news. So sign me up. Sign me up for the future. And then the only other story was New York woman charged with stalking Hugh Jackman. Now that to me is the top entertainment story right there, because stalkers are very dangerous people. Uh, Truth be known, I had a stalker. It wasn't anything as big as that, but it's scary. It's weird. You're like, you start thinking about things that you don't want to think about, like, is anybody hiding behind that tree? Or, have I secured all my belongings? Because stalker person could be there to steal it or take it or sabotage it. It's a weird situation. So I feel bad for Hugh Jackman. Sure, the guy's a superstar. He's got millions of dollars, whatever, but, it's a scary thing to have a stalker. So I feel for him. But, looking over at these news stories, it's like, I guess it's just because it's an aggregate site and they just throw them up here. But it seems to me there's a lot more important things happening in the world. I read other news sites than this. For a long time, I got my news from the TV, like a lot of people, I think. And then I started reading the internet. And over years, I've I found sites that I feel are very accurate. I find McClatchy News is pretty good. I read a lot of stuff on antiwar.com. And I'll tell you, when you read antiwar.com, to me you get a much better feel of the world and what's going on. Because you just don't get it in American newspapers or television, really, of the news. Forget it. They just don't really cover it. There's so much going on still in Iraq and Afghanistan. On a daily basis. The places are being torn apart. And you wouldn't know it by watching the news here. What's the biggest news story? Gun control here? Gun control, which to me is so ironic that they talk about gun control here when we are blowing up the world with flying robots. It's just very sad. But I didn't want this podcast to be dreary and, kind of newsy. So I guess I really should get off the topic of news and talk about something that I like to talk about that's exciting. To me, talking about webcomics is exciting because I make them. As you know, I make the Webcomic Factory with my friends, and Superfrat also with my friends. So go to the webcomicfactory.com and superfrat.com and check them out. But the webcomic I like to read these days is called Crossed, and that's at the Avatar Press website. So check out avatarpress.com. The navigation on the comic itself is a little clunky, but you get the hang of it after a while. It's called Crossed, and it comes out in I think 10-page increments, something like that, 12 maybe. I forget how many pages, but the basic premise of the comic, which is written by Garth Ennis, is that it is like a zombie plague type scenario, end of the world, except that instead of zombies, the undead variety, they're the infected kind of zombie, and instead of being like undead and shambling or running or whatever, they're more like the Reavers in the TV series Firefly, if you've ever seen that. The infected are completely homicidal. They will kill you, rape you, eat you. Just do every horrible, disgusting thing you could possibly think of. They will do if they get a hold of you. And so the survivors are deathly scared of being captured by these people. You can notice one of these infected, they have a distinctive rash across their face that is in the shape of a cross. That's the name of the book. And I'll tell you, it's just been great. It's a bit graphic, to say the least. So if you don't have the stomach for that kind of stuff, stay away from it. But I find it very intense. It's just, a relentlessly cool comic with its own take on the zombie apocalypse. So, and I love Garth Ennis's writing. I think he's really sharp. Love the stuff he works on. He's the guy who did Preacher. So if you love Preacher, I think you'll love this book. So check it out online. That's Crossed at avatar.press. wordpress.com. So, what else is going on in the Webcomic Factory site? I've got a new comic which I haven't launched yet. Still working on it. It's going to be a full page deal, narrative. So I'm sort of holding back on it because we got a lot of other stuff on the site right now, and we're trying to build up some pages. We got 6 pages in the can. The first story is 22 pages, so might wait till we're close to about halfway through before we launch it. We are doing a new comic now. Our newest comic we launched, called East Coast versus West Coast, which is a 2-panel comic, and it's basically what it says. It's about East Coast culture versus West Coast culture. Yesterday's installment was called The Caffeine Effect, and it was about how people react when they're getting their coffee and they spill it. And the West Coast guys are very sort of calm and cool, and the East Coast guys are very sort of like wound up and intense. And the interesting thing about the comic is it's getting a lot of people are talking about it a lot on some of the social networks. They're getting into it because they're debating the whole East Coast West Coast thing. And so a lot of the postings we do is on a site called Reddit, reddit.com. Great site, great community, and they have little sub communities, and you can find us usually in the comics room or the webcomic room. But they will get into these arguments about whether or not the comic is honest, whether it's true, or whether or not we're encompassing the whole, East Coast West Coast thing. And what happens is when you put up a link, people vote it up or down. So typically, if you get a good comic that people like, it gets voted up. Maybe you get a few downvotes, but generally they'll be upvoted. And so your numbers will be like, you'll get one of them we got 70 upvotes, and maybe we had 5 downvotes, so our score was 65, right? And then if you get, voted to 0, usually languish at 0, and that's it. The average comic for us usually gets 2 or 3 votes, maybe 4 or 5, and does okay. Well, today or yesterday we got, for East Coast West Coast, we had 33 upvotes and 27 downvotes. So it was this back and forth battle between people, which I find funny because it's East Coast versus West Coast. So I'm wondering, I wish I could see kind of behind the scenes of all those voting and see who lived where. I mean, it'd be funny to see if whenever we made the East Coast look good, the East Coasters voted down, the West Coasters voted up, or vice versa. It's just kind of weird, the whole social media thing. But at least people are reading and talking about it, so that's exciting. And it is one of our new projects on the Webcomic Factory, so definitely check that out. Also, Christian, my partner in crime on the Webcomic Factory, has just launched her site again. It is, and you can see a link on the blog for Sunday. It's her site, and she's got a comic called, a webcomic called 20%, which is about a restaurant in hell where if the sufferers can get a 20% tip, they can finally get out of hell, but that's nearly impossible. So they're constantly struggling to serve all these horrible demons and the people who come in and out of the restaurant. So finally she has tons of material for that, and she's finally launched it, and so it's pretty exciting to see 20%. I got to put a regular link on the Webcomic Factory site somewhere, but definitely go check that out, and you can see the link on the blog. So lots of stuff going on. Christian and I have been working on a ton of stuff. We're working on a brand new comic with Tom Krasinski. Anyhow, we're working on the script for it. And it's Tom Krasinski, of course, drew Post-Apocalyptic Nick, which was our Kickstarter, which, by the way, if you missed out on our Kickstarter, we are now selling the books, the pins, the t-shirts, and all the Kickstarter stuff we made. All the Kickstarter stuff has been fulfilled, so now we're offering it to the general public. So please go to the Webcomic Factory, and you click on up at the top, it says shop. You can see a Post-Apocalyptic Nick link, and it will take you to the store and all the stuff we have available. We do have limited stuff, the t-shirts and and only so many books. So if you want something, order it now, and just shoot me an email at the fixesin@comcast.net. The fixesin@comcast.net. And the prices are there, but shoot me an email with your address, and I can figure out the shipping and tell you exactly how much it'll cost. So I'd rather do it that way, because I used to do stuff with like a store, Yahoo store and stuff, and I still do that on my old site. But it's kind of a pain in the ass figuring out the postage everywhere now, because they change it. I really got screwed. Speaking of Kickstarter, excuse me, Zach. I kind of got screwed. I shouldn't say I really got screwed. I kind of got screwed on Kickstarter because what happened was I estimated the postage, and I estimated it before the postage rates went up, and I kind of underestimated it for the foreign stuff, which was, that's my fault. But so if you live in a foreign country, you got to email me anyway. But even if you live in the States, I really got to figure it out. So. It all depends on the weight and the distance, because they actually charge you differently in the United States. I don't think they used to. It used to be so cheap just to send priority mail. It used to be like, I don't know, $2.50. It was great, but now it's like $5, and I can only stuff so much in that envelope. Plus, it gets banged up all the time. So if you're a fanatic about the condition of whatever you order, trust me, you want me to put some padding in the damn thing. So anyway. If you're interested in getting something, or even if you just want to send me a letter so I can talk about it on the podcast, send it to me at thefixesin@comcast.net. Because, I'll take your letters. I will totally take your letters. And we can do sort of a mail answer thing. I would love to do that. So please send me letters about comics, web comics. Don't go crazy with your personal problems. I'm only human. I can only do so much. I might be able to help you. I don't know. I know things. So I think that's it for the media podcast this week. I hope you liked it. I was inspired to do a podcast because I started listening to the Bill Burr podcast. And if you haven't heard that, it's awesome. As I said, I wanted to do audio only, but I really couldn't pull that together. This is much easier for me. I'm used to doing video and whatnot. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it becomes a weekly thing. And that's it for Tony this week. So stop by the sites and vote me up. And have a good night. Do, 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 do.